I'm a 22-year-old girl, and I've been doing DoorDash on weekend nights for about a year now. Living alone in an apartment just outside of Dallas isn't cheap, and my retail job during the day barely covers the bills on its own. So picking up delivery shifts a few nights a week became kind of a lifeline for me. I never really thought much about the risks when I first started. You're mostly just driving from a restaurant to someone's front door and heading back out again. Easy enough, right? I usually start around 10 p.m. and try to wrap up by 1:30 or 2 a.m. The later you go, the better the tips, honestly, since most of those orders are coming from people who simply don't want to leave their house at that hour. The roads get quiet too, which I actually kind of liked. Less traffic, clearer routes, and I'd usually have a podcast going in the background to keep me company. It was genuinely one of the more relaxing parts of my entire week. Or at least it was, until the night I'm about to tell you about. It was a Saturday in late October. I'd already knocked out maybe 6 or 7 deliveries, and everything was going smoothly. Around 11:45 p.m., I picked up an order from an Applebee's off a busy main strip and headed toward the drop-off, which was about 10 minutes into a quiet residential neighborhood on the edge of town. Not sketchy by any means, just still and dark. The kind of neighborhood where all the porch lights are off and every house looks exactly the same once the sun goes down. I dropped the food at the front door, confirmed the delivery in the app, and walked back to my car. That's when I first noticed it. A black pickup truck was parked about 4 houses down on the opposite side of the street. Engine running, no headlights on. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe someone was just sitting in their car before heading inside for the night. It happens all the time. But something about it made me glance over twice before I got in and pulled away. I headed toward my next pickup, which was at a McDonald's about 6 minutes out. It wasn't until I turned off the neighborhood road and onto the main street that a set of headlights appeared behind me. I still wasn't immediately alarmed, but as I drove further and made a couple of turns heading toward the McDonald's, those same headlights stayed right with me at every single turn. I started paying much closer attention to the rearview mirror. I got to the McDonald's, parked, and went inside to grab the order. When I came back out, the black pickup was sitting across the road in a gas station parking lot. Just sitting there, idling. No one getting out, no one going inside the store. I could see it clearly under the bright lot lights. Big truck, dark color, and I couldn't make out the plate from where I was standing. My stomach dropped right there in that parking lot. I sat in my car for a second longer than I needed to, genuinely trying to talk myself out of what I was thinking. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Same route, same timing, just 2 cars headed in the same direction. I pulled back out and kept moving. Within 30 seconds, those headlights were right behind me again. My hands got tight on the wheel, and I stopped trying to convince myself otherwise. I had one more delivery queued up. The drop-off was on a street even further into another residential area. The absolute last thing I wanted was to lead whoever this was down a quiet dead-end road at midnight with not a single person around. So instead of following my GPS, I took a completely different route and merged onto a busier road lined with fast food places and a Walmart that was still open and lit up. The truck followed me onto that road too. At that point, I just accepted what was happening. I called my roommate, hands shaking a little as I hit her name on the screen, and the first thing I said was, "Don't hang up. I think someone is following me." She didn't panic, which I needed. She just said,
"Drive straight to the police station right now. Don't stop anywhere else."
I already knew that was the right call, but hearing her say it gave me the push to stop second-guessing and just do it. I cancelled the last delivery in the app and turned in the direction of the station, which was only about 3 or 4 minutes away. The truck was still behind me when I turned into the parking lot. I pulled in fast and parked directly under the overhead lights near the front entrance. The pickup slowed as it passed the lot entrance, paused for just a moment, and then turned in after me. My whole body went cold. I locked my doors, stayed on the phone with my roommate, and dialed 911 on my second phone at the same time. A tall man in a dark hoodie got out of the truck and stood right next to it, looking in my direction. The 911 operator stayed calm and told me help was close. Within 2 or 3 minutes, a patrol car came around from the back side of the building and pulled up alongside the pickup. The man didn't run. The officers walked over, spoke to him briefly, and had him on the ground in handcuffs inside of a minute. An officer came over to my car to check on me a few minutes after that. He explained that the man had been tied to a series of car break-ins and robberies across that part of town over the past several weeks, and that he had been specifically targeting young women driving alone late at night. My small white Honda fit exactly the profile of what he'd been looking for. I sat in that parking lot, shaking for close to half an hour before I felt steady enough to drive myself home. I still do DoorDash. It helps me pay rent, and I actually enjoy it most nights. But I stop at midnight now. No exceptions. I installed dash cams, front and rear, and I never dismiss that gut feeling anymore, no matter how hard my brain tries to rationalize it away. Every single sign was right there in front of me from the very beginning of that night. I've been driving long haul for going on 11 years now. Flatbed work mostly, which means heavy equipment, oversized loads, machinery, the kind of freight that takes a little more care and attention than standard box trailers. I work for a mid-sized carrier out of Amarillo, Texas, and I've run just about every major corridor in the country at this point. I-10, I-40, I-20, you name it. I've pulled overnight shifts across the New Mexico desert more times than I can count. And until this particular night, the worst thing that ever happened to me out there was a blown steer tire outside of Tucumcari. The run I'm talking about was a load of industrial generators strapped down on my flatbed, going from a job site in Albuquerque, New Mexico, all the way to a construction depot outside of Oklahoma City. It was a Wednesday night in early March, and I'd started the drive around 8 p.m. after spending most of the afternoon doing pre-trip checks and getting the load secured properly. Flatbed loads have to be strapped and chained tight, and with oversized equipment, you're also dealing with flags and lights to keep things legal. So by the time I actually got rolling, the sun had already gone down. The first couple of hours out of Albuquerque were easy. I-40 east through the high desert is a long, straight, empty road at night, and I liked it that way. Light traffic, clear skies, my CB on low in the background. I stopped at a Love's Travel stop just past Santa Rosa to fuel up, grab a coffee, and log my stop time. It was around 11:15 when I pulled in. The lot wasn't busy. There were maybe 4 or 5 other rigs parked out in the back rows, and a handful of cars near the store entrance. I pulled my rig up to the diesel lane, got out, and started fueling. That's when I first noticed the car. A beat-up maroon sedan, older model, was moving slowly along the outer edge of the parking lot. Not pulling into a space, not heading toward the pumps, just circling. I noticed it once, watched it for a second, then went back to watching the fuel gauge. By the time my tanks were filling, the sedan had come around again. Same slow speed, same path. I kept my eyes on it this time, and after it passed the far end of the lot, It slowed almost to a stop and sat there for a moment before moving again. There were 2 people in it, maybe 3. Hard to tell in the dark. I didn't like the feeling it gave me, but I also didn't have anything solid to go on. People do strange things at truck stops at night. I went inside to grab my coffee and pay. As I was coming back out, a man was standing near the front of my truck. He was maybe mid-30s, wearing a grey jacket, hands in his pockets. He looked at me when I came out and nodded. I nodded back and kept walking toward the cab.
Long way from home?
He said, just loud enough for me to hear. I stopped and turned.
Just passing through.
I said, keeping it short. He looked at the load on the flatbed.
Heavy equipment? Headed east? That's right.
There was a pause. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly kind of smile. More like someone measuring something.
What all are you hauling?
I've had people ask about loads before, usually out of genuine curiosity, but the way he was asking didn't sit right. It was too casual, too studied, like he already knew and just wanted to see if I'd tell him.
Machinery,
I said, and left it at that. I got into the cab, locked the door, and watched him in my mirror as I started the engine. He stood there for a moment, hands still in his pockets, then walked back toward the far end of the lot where the sedan was still idling near the shadows. I noted the direction and pulled out of the lot. I got back on I-40 and kept it moving. There was almost no one on the road at that hour heading east, which was normal for that stretch. About 15 minutes out of the truck stop, headlights appeared behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. A car coming up behind a semi on a dark highway is just part of the job. But the vehicle behind me wasn't gaining. It wasn't trying to pass. It just settled in about 200 feet back and held that exact distance. I changed speed a few times over the next few miles, slowed slightly, then brought it back up. The headlights matched every time without fail. They were smaller than a truck's lights, lower to the ground. A car. I got on the CB and tried to raise anyone on channel 19, which is the standard highway channel most drivers monitor. Got a crackle, and then a voice maybe 2 or 3 channels over. Sounded like it was a while back. I couldn't get a clear response. I tried my phone next, and I had a weak bar, which was enough. I called my night dispatcher and told him what was going on. The stop, the man, the car now pacing me on the highway in the middle of nowhere. He told me to keep him on the line and said he was going to see who was near my position. For the next few miles, nothing changed. The headlights stayed back there, steady as a shadow. I'd been doing this long enough to know that if someone wants to box in a loaded flatbed, they usually work in at least 2 vehicles. I started watching the oncoming lane for any sign of another car positioned ahead, but the road ahead was completely black and clear. Then the headlights started moving up, slowly at first, like they were just closing the gap. I held my speed and watched the mirror. They kept coming until they were maybe 80 feet back. Then they swung out into the left lane. I couldn't see a thing with the high beams suddenly blasting into my mirrors, and I had to cut my eyes away. The car stayed there, right at the edge of my blind spot, not passing, not dropping back, just sitting there in the oncoming lane at highway speed. I put on my 4-ways. That usually signals to other drivers that something's wrong or that I need space. It didn't matter. The car sat there for what felt like a full 2 minutes, then dropped back behind me again. I heard my dispatcher on the phone saying something, and I told him the car was directly behind me again and that I was on a dead stretch with no exits visible. About 40 seconds later, a second set of headlights appeared far ahead of me, coming westbound. As those lights got closer, the car behind me abruptly slowed, fell way back, and then within about a mile, it turned off onto what I assumed was a ranch road or a gravel pull-off. No brake lights. It just disappeared into the dark. A minute or so later, a westbound semi passed me going the other direction, and just like that, the road behind me was empty. I drove the next 30 miles without stopping, got into Texas, and pulled into a large travel plaza just past the state line where I could see other trucks, and there was decent lighting. I sat there for about 20 minutes, drank the rest of my now cold coffee, and gave my dispatcher a full account of everything. He filed an incident report and told me law enforcement had been notified of suspicious vehicle activity in that corridor. Apparently it wasn't the first time. There had been reports over the preceding month of a vehicle matching that description in the area near truck stops along I-40, and at least one driver had been approached in a similar way at a fuel stop. Whether they were scouting for a cargo theft opportunity or something worse, I don't know for certain. What I do know is that flatbed loads with visible, high-value equipment attract a different kind of attention than a box trailer. You can't hide what you're carrying. I still run that same corridor on a regular basis. I still stop at that same Love's in Santa Rosa sometimes because the coffee is decent and it breaks the long drive up nicely. But I'm a lot more deliberate now about who is near my truck while I'm fueling, and I keep my phone where I can reach it before I even step out of the cab. And I never let a slow-moving car in a dark parking lot pass without watching it until I know exactly where it goes. I've been doing after-school pickup and childcare for a family in our neighborhood for about 3 years now. It started as a favor to a close friend of mine, Diane, whose husband travels constantly for work and who has 2 kids she can barely keep up with on her own. Her daughter Maya is 14 and her son Tyler is 9. I'm not a certified nanny or anything like that, just a neighbor with a flexible schedule who genuinely loves kids. I pick them up from school, drive them to their activities, and sometimes stay with them through the evenings when Diane is running behind. It works out well for both of us, and honestly, those 2 kids have become a pretty significant part of my week without me fully realizing it until this happened. This particular evening was a Thursday in late November. Maya had a dance recital at her studio on the other side of town, and Tyler had tagged along since there was nowhere else for him to be. The recital ran longer than anyone expected, and by the time we got back to the car and got everyone buckled in, it was a few minutes past 9. The studio is about 25 minutes from their house on a good day, and most of the drive back takes you through a semi-rural stretch of road that connects 2 residential areas, the kind of road that has no sidewalks, patchy lighting, and a speed limit low enough that people usually treat it more like a suggestion. Not completely isolated, but not heavily traveled either, especially at that hour in late fall when it gets dark by 5 and most people are already settled in for the night. We were maybe 10 minutes into the drive when I noticed headlights behind us. The road had been mostly empty, so it stood out a little, but I didn't think much of it. We made a left turn onto the county road that runs more directly toward their neighborhood, and the vehicle behind us made the same turn. Still didn't feel like anything worth reacting to. About 3 minutes later, the headlights had closed the gap considerably. Whoever it was, they were sitting right up behind us, close enough that I could make out a dark pickup truck in my mirror. No front license plate, which I remember clocking almost automatically. I moved slightly toward the right shoulder to give it room to pass, the way you do when someone seems eager to get by. It didn't pass. I picked up speed a little, enough to put some distance between us. The truck matched it. I told myself it was probably just someone from the recital heading the same direction. Maya was in the back, scrolling her phone, and Tyler had already dozed off against the window. Then I glanced in the mirror again and realized the truck had pulled up so close I could barely see its headlights below the top of my rear windshield. That stopped reading as a coincidence in my head right around then. I turned off my planned route and took a different road, one that added a few minutes but ran through a more residential stretch with streetlights and houses. The truck followed.
Maya,
I said, keeping my voice as even as I could.
does your mom know anyone with a dark pickup truck?
She looked up from her phone.
I don't think so. Why? There's a car behind us that's been following since around the studio. I'm going to call your mom real quick, just to let her know we're almost home.
I called Diane on the hands-free. She answered on the second ring, and I told her as evenly as I could manage that we were on our way, but that a vehicle had been tailing us for several minutes and I had taken an alternate route. She told me to stay on the line. I turned into the parking lot of a Shell station that was still lit up and open, pulling up close to the front entrance directly under the overhead lights. Part of me was hoping the truck would just roll past the lot and keep going. It didn't. It pulled in at the far end and parked. The engine stayed running. I told Diane, still on the line, that the vehicle had followed us into the lot and stopped. Her voice got quieter in a way that told me she understood the situation. She said to stay in the car and not open the doors for anyone. After maybe 30 seconds, the truck's door opened and a man got out. Heavy-set, dark jacket, walked toward my car with his hands slightly out like he wanted to appear relaxed and unthreatening. He stopped about 2 car lengths away and gave a slow wave. I lowered my window, maybe 2 inches.
Hey, sorry if I spooked you.
He said.
I was just trying to get your attention back there. I think I know your girl. Is that Maya?
He nodded toward the back seat.
I'm her uncle, Rob. Her mom's been trying to get in touch with me about a family thing, and I spotted y'all at the studio earlier.
I looked in the rearview mirror. Maya had gone completely still. Her face was flat and unreadable in a way that had nothing to do with surprise or confusion. She wasn't reacting the way a person reacts when an actual relative turns up unexpectedly. She was barely breathing.
She know you?
I said quietly toward the mirror. Maya gave the smallest shake of her head. No. From the phone still sitting open in the cup holder, I heard Diane's voice.
Who is that? What did he just say his name was?
He says his name is Rob. He's saying he's your brother.
Silence for a beat. Then Diane said,
I don't have a brother named Rob. I don't have a brother at all.
The man was still standing there, still holding that smile. I put the car in reverse, backed up until I was directly in front of the sliding glass doors of the store, then shifted into drive and pulled right up to the entrance. I took both kids inside, told the cashier we needed to call 911, and stayed in a spot where the security cameras were clearly visible until officers arrived about 8 minutes later. The man in the truck did not leave. He stayed parked at the far end of that lot the whole time officers were on scene, not attempting to leave and not getting back out of the truck, which I still think about sometimes. What came out over the days that followed was not something I had been prepared for. It came out that Maya had been communicating online with someone for several months, someone she believed was a teenage boy she had connected with through a shared interest group. The messages had gradually shifted over time, and she had been asked to keep the conversations private from her mom. She had. She didn't know the man in the parking lot by face, but she knew the name Rob. It had come up in the messages before, more than once. Diane called me the following night, after everything had been sorted through with the detectives and the initial interviews were done. She cried for most of the phone call and apologized twice for it, which she had absolutely no reason to do. She kept saying she had no idea, that Maya had seemed completely normal, that she couldn't understand how it had gone on that long. I didn't have much to offer, except that Maya was home and safe, which was the only thing that mattered about that night. I still do pick up for the family a few days a week, same as before. Tyler still falls asleep against the window on the way home from things, the same as always. Maya is doing okay, from what I can tell, though she's quieter than she used to be, in a way that feels less like teenage moods and more like something she's still working through. Diane put monitoring on the devices and had a long series of conversations with both kids, the kind that none of us want to have, but that apparently need to happen much earlier than most parents think. As for me, I pay attention differently now. I check my mirrors more deliberately, and I notice what stays with me through more than one turn. I don't reason myself out of something that already feels off, and I don't wait for more evidence before I act on what my gut is already telling me. That night, I almost kept driving and hoped the truck would eventually turn off on its own. I am very glad I didn't.